I wasn't meant to hear it. I had gone upstairs to grab the book I'd left on my nightstand, creeping so I wouldn't disturb my daughter, who was in the kitchen on the phone. But halfway down the hall I froze. Because I heard Olivia's voice low, urgent, sharper than I'd ever heard it before. "Just be patient," she whispered. "Once she's gone, the house will be ours." My stomach dropped. I pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself, my breath caught in my throat. She was talking about me. Her mother. The woman who had raised her, sacrificed for her, and given her everything. And now, my only child spoke of me as if I were nothing more than an obstacle in her way. My name is Helen. I was 62 years old that night, a widow, living in the home I had shared with my late husband for over 3 decades. That house wasn't just brick and mortar. It was where we built our life, where laughter filled the kitchen, where Olivia took her first steps, where my husband planted roses each spring. It was more than a house. It was my heart, my history. And apparently, to Olivia, it was nothing more than an inheritance waiting to be claimed. I stood in the hallway, every muscle trembling, listening as her voice carried. "No, she won't live forever. She's slowing down already. Trust me, Ryan. The minute she's out of the picture, we'll finally have everything we deserve." Ryan. Her boyfriend. Of course. I had never trusted him. There was something about the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, how he always spoke just a little too smoothly, how his compliments felt rehearsed. But Olivia had been enchanted from the start. And now, it seemed, he had convinced her that my death was nothing more than the key to their dream life. I wanted to storm into the kitchen, demand answers, scream until my voice gave out. But I couldn't move. Because my heart wasn't just broken. It was shattered. When Olivia finally ended the call, I slipped back into my room, silent, shaking, holding my breath until I heard her footsteps retreat upstairs. And then I sat on the edge of my bed, staring into the dark, my hands pressed against my face. How had it come to this? How had my daughter, my Olivia, become a stranger capable of such coldness? To understand the weight of that moment, you need to know what Olivia meant to me. She was my only child, born when I was 34, after years of miscarriages and heartbreak. The day she came into the world, I held her tiny body against mine and swore I would give her the life she deserved, a life full of love, safety, and opportunity. And I did. When my husband passed away suddenly in his 50s, it was Olivia who kept me going. I worked 2 jobs to keep our home, to pay for her schooling, to make sure she never felt the absence of her father too deeply. I skipped meals to save money for her piano lessons. I took on extra shifts so she could have new clothes for school dances. Every dream she had, I bent my back to support it. Because that's what mothers do. At least, that's what I believed. Olivia was bright, beautiful, and full of promise. But she was also restless. She always wanted more. When she was a teenager, she begged for designer shoes when I could barely afford groceries. She pouted when I suggested community college instead of a private university. And when Ryan came into her life, that hunger only grew. He was charming, I'll give him that. The kind of man who knew exactly what to say, how to make someone feel special. But underneath, I sensed ambition. Greed. The first time I met him, he shook my hand firmly, smiled widely, and said, "I'll make sure Olivia never has to struggle again." But the way he looked around my house, lingering on the details, the antique clock, the paintings, the solid oak furniture, made my skin crawl. It was as if he wasn't seeing a home. He was seeing assets. Over time, Ryan became a constant presence. He encouraged Olivia to push boundaries, to demand more. "Why should you have to wait until you're older to live the good life?" I overheard him once. "That house will be yours one day. Why not sooner?" Olivia laughed then, brushing him off. But now, months later, she was whispering into the phone about waiting for me to die. That night, I barely slept. Memories kept flooding me of Olivia as a little girl running through the garden, of her curled up against me during thunderstorms, of her beaming when I surprised her with a birthday cake. How could that child have grown into the woman I had heard on the phone? And yet, as the sun rose and light filled my room, one truth crystallized in my mind. Whether Ryan had planted the idea or not, Olivia had chosen to embrace it. She wasn't just being manipulated. She was complicit. And if I didn't protect myself, she and Ryan would take everything I had built, everything my husband and I had worked for. But what they didn't know is this. I was not as weak as they thought. And while they plotted behind my back, I was already beginning to plan. By the way, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The morning after I overheard Olivia's phone call, I woke up with a dull ache in my chest, the kind that comes from a wound too deep for words. I went about my day as if nothing had happened, brewed coffee, watered the plants, answered a neighbor's call about her gardenias. But inside, every sound, every movement felt muffled, as though I was walking through fog. I replayed her voice again and again. Once she's gone, the house will be ours. It was one thing to suspect Ryan's influence. It was another to hear my own daughter plotting my absence. And I knew it was only a matter of time before their whispers became actions. It started small. One evening, Olivia and Ryan came by for dinner. I had made roasted chicken, Olivia's favorite since childhood. She ate absent-mindedly, scrolling through her phone, while Ryan leaned back in his chair, surveying the room. "This house is beautiful," he said, for the 5th time in as many visits. "But don't you think it's too much for one person?" I set down my fork slowly. "Too much?" He smiled politely, but there was a sharpness in his eyes. "I just mean, it's a lot of space to keep up. Big houses can be exhausting at your age. Wouldn't it make sense to downsize? Something cozier, easier to manage?" Olivia chimed in immediately, as if rehearsed. "He's right, Mom. You're always saying the stairs are a pain. You could get a nice condo downtown. Less work, more fun." I stared at her. "And what would happen to this house?" She shrugged. "We could take it over. Keep it in the family. You wouldn't have to worry about it anymore." My blood ran cold. They weren't even hiding it. Over the next few weeks, the pressure grew. Olivia started leaving brochures for retirement communities on the kitchen counter. Ryan casually dropped phrases like estate planning and long-term care. One afternoon, I found a folder on my desk labeled property transfer agreement. Ryan had filled it out, complete with spaces marked for my signature. When I confronted Olivia, she didn't even flinch. "It's just paperwork, Mom. For convenience. If something happened to you suddenly, it would be so much easier if Ryan and I already had things handled." Convenience. That word burned in my ears. Convenient for them, maybe. But for me, it would mean handing over the very thing my husband and I had built together. I tried reasoning with her. "Olivia, this house isn't just wood and stone. It's where your father and I raised you. It's where he died. Don't you feel any connection to it?" Her face hardened. "I feel like it's too much house for one old woman." "You can't live here forever, Mom. It's time to be realistic." Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice smooth, coaxing. "We only want what's best for you, Helen. Trust us." Trust. The word tasted bitter. That night, alone in the quiet of my bedroom, I allowed myself to cry. Not because of the house, though the thought of losing it hurt, but because of the look in Olivia's eyes. There was no love. No hesitation. Just entitlement. And it wasn't Ryan twisting her arm anymore. She believed she deserved it. She believed she deserved my life, my home, my security. Even if it meant pushing me aside to get it. Days turned into weeks, and their pressure became relentless. Ryan began calling me directly, offering to handle the details. Olivia stopped visiting unless it was to bring up the house. And every time I tried to shift the conversation, she snapped, her patience thinner than ever. "Why are you being so difficult, Mom? Why can't you just make this easy for us?" Us. That word cut deeper than anything else. Because somewhere along the way, Olivia had stopped being my daughter. She was Ryan's partner. And together, they had turned me into their obstacle. One Sunday afternoon, they staged what I later came to think of as the intervention. They showed up with takeout, sat me down in the living room, and laid it all out. "Mom, we've been talking," Olivia began, her tone clipped. "It's not safe for you to stay here alone anymore. The stairs, the yard work, the upkeep, it's too much. You're not young." Ryan slid the folder toward me again. "All you have to do is sign." We'll take care of everything. You'll be happier, trust me. I looked down at the neat lines awaiting my signature. And I realized something in that moment. They weren't going to stop. Not until they got what they wanted. Not until I was out of the picture legally, financially, or otherwise. But what they didn't know is this. I may have been older. I may have been grieving, tired, lonely. But I was not helpless. I had built a life out of resilience. And I wasn't about to hand it over to my own daughter and her greedy boyfriend. If they wanted a game, I would play. But the ending? The ending would be mine. The day they staged their so-called intervention was the day something in me hardened. I sat there, staring at those papers Ryan had slid across the table, pretending to hesitate, pretending to weigh my options. But inside, I was no longer the grieving widow or the tired mother they thought I was. I was a woman with a plan. And if Olivia and Ryan wanted a game, then I would play it better than they ever could. The first step was simple: patience. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't storm out. That's what they expected. Instead, I smiled softly, my voice calm. You may be right. Maybe there is too much house for me. Let me think about it. Olivia's eyes lit up, a flicker of triumph crossing her face. Ryan squeezed her hand under the table, as if to say, we've got her. They believed I was bending. And that was exactly what I wanted. From that day on, I played the role. I sighed more often. I rubbed my knees when I climbed the stairs. I let dishes sit in the sink a little longer and dust gathers on the shelves. When Olivia visited, I let her see me sitting in my chair, staring blankly out the window, as though life was simply passing me by. See, Mom, she'd say, smug. Wouldn't it be easier if you just let us take over? I'd nod weakly, murmuring, maybe. Inside, though, I was cataloging every word. Because while they thought they were winning, I was building my arsenal. I bought a small notebook and began writing everything down. Every time Olivia mentioned the house. Every time Ryan pushed another document under my nose. Every sly comment, every slip of the tongue. And when their words grew too important to risk forgetting, I used my phone. Recordings. Once the house is ours, we'll finally be able to renovate the kitchen. Click. Saved. She's stubborn, but she'll give in soon. She has to. Click. Saved. Piece by piece, I was gathering not just memories, but evidence. But I knew I couldn't do this alone. So one afternoon, when Olivia believed I was at my knitting circle, I slipped into town and walked into a law office recommended by an old friend. Her name was Deborah. She was sharp, confident, the kind of woman who didn't waste time with pleasantries. After I explained everything, the phone call, the pressure, the documents, she leaned forward, her expression tight. Helen, what they're doing isn't just cruel. It's coercion. If you sign those papers under pressure, it could strip you of your rights. But with the notes and recordings you're keeping, you'll have leverage. And trust me, leverage is power. Leverage. The words settled in my chest like a spark catching flame. Deborah helped me quietly secure my estate. We drew up new documents that ensured the house, my accounts, and even my personal belongings would be protected. She explained every clause, every safeguard, making sure that not even Olivia's entitlement or Ryan's scheming could unravel them. And then she gave me advice I'll never forget. Play along. Let them think you're weak. Let them reveal their greed in full view. The moment will come when you can show the world who you really are. Until then, stay quiet. Stay ready. I walked out of her office that day with my head higher than it had been in months. Because for the first time, I wasn't just surviving their betrayal. I was preparing to end it. Back at home, I leaned into the role they wanted me to play. When Ryan bragged about the trips he and Olivia would take once they had the house, I smiled faintly, as though too tired to argue. When Olivia pressed me to sign, I feigned confusion, asking for more time, mumbling about needing to rest. And each time, I pressed record. It wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a story, their story of greed, entitlement, and betrayal. A story I would one day use to destroy them. Meanwhile, I began planting seeds. When neighbors stopped by, I mentioned innocently how much pressure Olivia and Ryan were putting on me. Not as complaints, but as offhand comments. Funny thing, Olivia keeps bringing up retirement homes. I suppose she means well. People noticed. They remembered. And when the time came, those small conversations would become echoes of the truth. The opportunity one was waiting for came sooner than I expected. Olivia and Ryan announced that they wanted to host a family gathering at my house, inviting relatives I hadn't seen in years, insisting it was time to make big decisions. I knew exactly what that meant. They were planning their big move. And what they didn't realize was that I had already prepared mine. That night, alone in my room, I lay out my notebook, the recordings, and the signed documents Deborah had helped me finalize. Everything was ready. They thought they were orchestrating my downfall. But at that family gathering, it wouldn't be me on trial. It would be them. The day of the family gathering dawned crisp and bright, the kind of spring day that begged for joy. But I wasn't joyful. I was ready. I polished the dining table until it gleamed, set out my best china, and even placed roses from my garden in the center vase. Roses my late husband had once planted with his own hands. It was more than decoration. It was a reminder. This was my home. And no one, not even my own daughter, was going to take it from me. By mid-afternoon, the house was filled with chatter. Olivia floated from room to room, her voice lilting, playing hostess like the house already belonged to her. Ryan shook hands with relatives, his grin too wide, his words too slick. Big changes coming soon, I overheard him say more than once, like a salesman promising a future he couldn't deliver. I stayed quiet, offering tea, smiling faintly, watching. Because I knew what was coming. And I was ready. When dinner was served, we gathered around the long oak table, plates steaming with roast beef and vegetables. Conversation bubbled old family stories, polite laughter, the clink of silverware. But halfway through the meal, Olivia cleared her throat. Her eyes gleamed as she rose, glass in hand. Everyone, she began, her tone sugary sweet. Ryan and I wanted to share something important tonight. It's about Mom. We've been talking, and we all agree it's time she considered downsizing. Gasps and murmurs spread around the table. My sister-in-law frowned. Downsizing? But Helen loves this house. Ryan slid a folder across the table toward me, his smile practiced. We've prepared everything for her. All she has to do is sign, and she won't have to worry about this big old place anymore. She'll be safe. Comfortable. The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. And Olivia, her chin lifted high, looked certain she had won. I didn't move at first. I let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable. Then, slowly, I pushed the folder back toward Ryan. My, I said softly. You've put in so much effort. Olivia's smile widened. See, Mom? It's for the best. I straightened in my chair, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. For the best? For whose best, Olivia? The color drained from her face. Ryan laughed awkwardly. Helen, we're just trying to help. But I cut him off. No. You're trying to take. And the two of you have made one mistake. I pulled a small recorder from my pocket and pressed play. And then Olivia's voice filled the room. Once she's gone, the house will be ours. The effect was instant. Gasps erupted around the table. Forks clattered onto plates. Olivia's face went white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Ryan's hand shot out, trying to snatch the recorder, but I pulled it back. Oh, I have more, I said evenly. Click. Another recording. She's stubborn, but she'll give in soon. She has to. Click. Once the house is ours, we'll finally be able to renovate the kitchen. The whispers around the table grew louder. One relative muttered, "My God." Another shook her head, glaring at Olivia. Olivia slammed her hand on the table. That's out of context. I fixed my eyes on her, steady and unflinching. What context makes it acceptable for a daughter to plot her mother's death, Olivia? What context justifies trying to steal the home your father and I built? Her lips trembled. Mom, I didn't mean. But Ryan cut in, his voice sharp. Don't listen to this. She's manipulating you, twisting our words. I smiled coldly. Funny. That's exactly what you've been doing, Ryan. But unlike you, I have proof. I pulled out the legal documents Deborah had helped me prepare, setting them on the table. These papers ensure this house and everything in it remain protected. Legally. Permanently. No trick, no signature you pressure me into will change that. The room went silent again. But this time, the silence wasn't heavy with uncertainty. It was heavy with judgment. And all of it was directed at Olivia and Ryan. My sister-in-law spoke up, her voice trembling with fury. Olivia, how could you do this to your mother? A cousin muttered, I knew Ryan was trouble. An uncle shook his head. Disgraceful. Olivia's eyes darted around the table, desperate. It's not what it looks like. I was just trying to help. But no one believed her. Because the truth had been played aloud, undeniable. And for once, Olivia's charm couldn't save her. I rose slowly, my voice steady, final. This is my home. My life. And I will not be erased from it by my own daughter and her greedy boyfriend. The weight of my words lingered. Olivia's face crumpled, tears threatening. Ryan muttered something under his breath, pushing back from the table, his mask slipping into anger. But the damage was done. The family had seen. The truth was out. And there was no going back. That night, as the last of the relatives left, avoiding Olivia and Ryan's desperate stares, I stood alone in my dining room, roses glowing softly in the lamplight. I had not only defended my home, I had reclaimed my power. And Olivia, my Olivia, had lost hers. After the family gathering, the silence in my house felt different. It wasn't the heavy silence of betrayal anymore. It was the quiet of victory. I walked through each room, the dining table still set, glasses half full, the roses leaning slightly in their vase, and for the first time in months, I felt like the house was mine again. Not just legally, not just on paper, but spiritually. I had reclaimed it. And no one, not even my own daughter, could take it from me. Olivia didn't speak to me for a week after that night. When she finally did, it wasn't an apology. It was anger. You humiliated me, she spat over the phone. In front of everyone. Do you know what you've done? I listened calmly. I showed the truth, Olivia. The truth you gave me yourself. Her voice cracked, shrill. You don't understand. Ryan and I had plans. You ruined everything. Your plans, I said evenly, were built on my destruction. And I won't apologize for stopping them. She hung up, the line dead before I could add another word. Word spread quickly through the family. Relatives who had once praised Olivia's ambition now avoided her calls. Ryan, stripped of his charm in the wake of the recordings, found himself unwelcome at gatherings. And slowly, the cracks in their perfect partnership began to show. I heard from a cousin that Ryan had moved out within months, chasing other opportunities. And Olivia? She was left alone, her reputation fractured, her support system gone. The very inheritance she had tried to steal had slipped further from her grasp than ever before. For me, life settled into a new rhythm. I tended my garden, the roses blooming brighter that summer than I'd ever seen them. I took walks with neighbors, joined a book club, and even started volunteering at the community center. And every time I returned home, I felt the walls embrace me, not as a fortress I had to defend, but as a sanctuary I had protected. The betrayal still stung, yes. But the sting dulled with time, replaced by something stronger, pride. Because I hadn't just survived my daughter's scheme. I had defeated it. On my own terms. One afternoon, months later, Olivia showed up at my door. Her eyes were tired, her posture slumped. Mom, she whispered, can we talk? I let her in. We sat at the same table where she and Ryan had once tried to push me into signing away my life. She twisted her hands together, her voice low. I messed up. I let Ryan talk me into things. I shouldn't have said those things. I didn't mean them. For a moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to see the little girl who once held my hand on her first day of school, who used to fall asleep in my lap during thunderstorms. But then I remembered the phone call, the folder, the recordings. And I realized, whether Ryan had lit the match or not, Olivia had chosen to keep the fire burning. I looked her in the eye, my voice steady. You betrayed me, Olivia. You betrayed your father's memory. And I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Tears welled in her eyes. Please, Mom. I just want things back the way they were. I shook my head slowly. Things can never go back. But you have to live with the choices you made. Just as I will live with mine. She left that day, shoulders hunched, silence heavy between us. And though a part of me ached for the daughter I had once known, another part of me felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Because I wasn't clinging to illusions anymore. I wasn't waiting for her approval or begging for her love. I had chosen myself. And in doing so, I had finally won. The roses bloomed again the following spring. As I stood in the garden, pruning the stems, I thought of my husband. He had always told me I was stronger than I believed. And he had been right. Olivia and Ryan had underestimated me. But I had proven to them, to my family, and most importantly, to myself, that I was not a woman to be erased. I was Helen, a mother, a widow, a survivor, and the keeper of my own life. That was my revenge glow. Not fire, not fury, but dignity. And it was brighter than anything Olivia and Ryan had ever tried to steal. Backhand index pointing right, what would you have done if your own child betrayed you like this? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the Betrayal Diaries for more stories where betrayal meets justice.